On today's podcast, we sit down with hit songwriter-producer JINBYJIN. We discuss co-writing 65 #1 hit songs and selling over 35 million physical copies around the world. What role cultural influences play in the creation and reception of K-pop and J-pop on a global scale. The key ingredients of a truly iconic hit song in the context of K-pop and J-pop, as well as insights into K-pop's fan culture and much, much more. You can't afford to miss it. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight.
Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's podcast, we welcome one of K-pop's most successful songwriter-producers, JINBYJIN. We discuss his unique approach to writing and producing K-pop hits, the growing impact of K-pop, the cultural and fan influences on its creation, and much, much more. If you're a songwriter or producer looking to break into the world of K-pop music, then this is one episode you can't afford to miss. Welcome back, Insiders. Today's guest is JINBYJIN. JINBY is one of the most successful songwriter-producers in the K-pop world. He has had enormous success with his team, 65 #1 hits on various Billboard charts throughout the world. And it was a great conversation. You know, K-pop is something that, of course, you know, in recent years with, you know, Blackpink and with, you know, BTS, those are kind of the big giants of the field. But K-pop has been around a lot longer than just those two, and has enormous influence not only in Korea, but also in America, as well as various territories around the world.
Yeah, and I thought one of the other points that were interesting was how K-pop and J-pop differ creatively. I thought that was an interesting take on which that was an education for me, because that's not an area where I'm very well versed in. So it was interesting to hear his thoughts on that.
Yeah, what I thought was so interesting about those thoughts, Eric, it's a great point you bring up, is because he talked about the cultural elements in fandom within those realms of K-pop and J-pop, and how deep the fan culture and how interconnected the fan culture is in K-pop.
Right.
Really, really an important factor, which goes to the heart of, you know, the whole element of physical goods.
Yeah, physical, which I thought was very interesting, because in the world that I deal with rock, hard rock, and metal, that's still an area that still does very good business in the physical world. And it was just interesting that the K-pop world, which you figure it's a much younger audience, that they wouldn't be into physical product, but apparently that's like the big thing that they're into. They're looking for that experience. I mean, some of the things that he was talking about of how they create these special edition CDs with these housing things and all this different, it's so intricate and so expansive that I was just blown away that's like a big thing for them in that world.
Absolutely. You know, in Japan, one of the interesting things about the point you're talking about is that physical goods, in terms of being a dominant form in the market, CDs, only in the last, I'd say, 2 years has streaming become something that became more prevalent.
Right.
Throughout the whole, they were outliers: Japan, Korea, Germany. Those are the three. For whatever reason, those cultures
still embrace physical product.
Well, to a far greater degree than anywhere else.
Right.
I mean, you look at like Sweden, which is literally like 2 countries away from Germany.
Right.
And it's 90% streaming.
Right.
90.
Well, the birthplace of Spotify. So yeah.
Correct. Yes. But we're talking culturally as a country.
Right.
In America, I think physical is less than 12, 13%.
Right.
And reducing every year. Whereas, you know, JINBY has sold 35 million copies,
which is just
of physical goods.
Right.
They love that, you know, physical thing.
Probably the only other outlier being Taylor Swift, because she does a lot of physical business as well too. So
she does, and yet it's more of a cultural thing.
Right.
Whereas she's doing that as an isolated artist.
Correct.
Who's got enormous popularity.
But just as a genre.
That's a genre. They're doing a lot of that, which that's a very interesting point that he talks about. And also how, you know, K-pop and J-pop differ creatively. in terms of its construction, in terms of its themes, what kinds of, songs and lyrical content it talks about. So that was another aspect that I thought was really interesting to this conversation as well.
Yeah, and the other aspect was the songwriters and producers who inspired him. I thought it was a very interesting, just very well spoken. I really loved all the things that he said. It was actually very inspiring for me because, like I said before, the world of K-pop and J-pop are not my forte or areas. Obviously I've heard of Blackpink and BTS and all the other bands that are involved in the genre, but it was just a real education and just a very bright and very smart guy. And I think it's a great interview that you're not going to want to miss. So insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with JINBYJIN.
JINBYJIN, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you. We are very, very grateful for you doing this. Let me start with, the question that I always like to ask our guests, first of all, is when in your life did you know that music was going to be your professional career path?
I never knew, really. And my bachelor degree was actually life engineering. So I didn't even know that I was able to pursue my career as a musician or music producer back then. And I still had a passion, so I had to go. And I had to just decide to be a musician. And everyone says, why? Because I was a pretty good student back then. I made an early graduation from the top school and then the full scholarship and everything. And my professor said when I said I'm going to be a musician, and why? Why you abandon everything that you have now? But I think it was the best decision for me. Obviously, life brings all these ups and downs and fluctuation of the emotions and everything. But when you are persistent enough and you give disciplines to yourself, then you actually can make a dream out of it. So now I'm here, and the rest become the history.
Yes, absolutely, and quite a history it is, which we're going to get into.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Jin, thank you so much for joining us. This is Eric. I wanted to ask you, who were the songwriters and producers who inspired you growing up?
Well, I listened to Beatles when I was in childhood, and then Beatles was always so whenever I hear Beatles, and I can actually smell the scent of the time. So it was like a winter time, and I was just playing around with the snows and everything. I went in, the house was warm, and my mom actually played the Beatles, and I still remember that night. And then my cheek got really red, and all the cozy vibe and cozy environment. So Beatles was the great inspiration, and also little by little I was listening towards the US pop the material as well. So I listened to a lot of jazz as well, Herbie Hancock and Stevie Wonder, Motown, and a lot of funk music. And then still now I listen to a lot of classical music as well. I did the film composition as well. So I listen to Chopin and Rachmaninoff, Debussy. So my palette is very wide. Yeah.
Absolutely. You and your co-writers have a very, very impressive track record. You have 65 number one hits on various Billboard charts and over 35 million physical records sold throughout the world. What I want to ask is, how do K-pop and J-pop differ in their terms of the creative process and approaches to songwriting and production, or do they?
So K-pop actually consists of a lot of different members. For example, when there is a group, 5 or 6, so they have different characteristics when it comes to the role. So there are vocalists, there are rappers, there are choreographers. So we have to cater all these different characteristics of the members, meaning we have to divide up the structures. Obviously, we have a verse and pre and the chorus in a similar pop structure, but still we can combine different genre, just swap the beat, and then people actually say it is a drop, but still it can be the chorus that people actually can sing along. So producers and songwriter in K-pop industry have to remember the differentiated factors to cater those type of difference compared to the just the normal US pop or American pop, so to speak. So when it comes to the musicality, then you can actually combine different things. So what I did now is just we listened to, somehow my co-writer actually come up with what do you listen to these, and somehow I just listened to David Bowie. I listened to Fame. Oh, that's a great reference. Let's just do that. So we started from there, and then we combined Prince on it, and we combined a little bit of a Motown of Michael Jackson and Jackson 5 on it. So it becomes a little bit bright, but still it has that grittiness and a little bit of funk elements to it. So as a musician, I absolutely loved those type of fusioning those type of genres into it. Some people say, like K-pop is just too much, and it feels like 5 songs in one song. But still, if you are musical enough and try to be open enough to accept what it is as a music, then it is actually pretty cool to be in, because you can be creative as much as you can when it comes to the production and songwriting.
Yeah, very much so. And it is a genre that is become worldwide, not just in Korea, not just in specific markets in Southeast Asia, but all over the world. I mean, not only with BTS, but with Blackpink and with several other artists, and so many of the artists that you've worked with. So it obviously has total global appeal in the marketplace as well. And now J-pop, I understand, is growing in its influence outside of Japan.
Yeah, but J-pop has a little bit difference, because they have a little bit more restricted expansion, I feel. But K-pop, we are accepting a lot of international writers. So, for example, 5 years ago, if I actually imagine my friends from Sweden and Norway living in Seoul, I couldn't imagine that. But now, where you living? Where are you based now? And then we just randomly talk, and then, no, I'm in Seoul. Oh, okay, are you traveling? No, I have a apartment here. So they actually decided to come and leave, because they want to actually be influenced by the culture and the living environment, everything, so that when they bring in some kind of different concept and theme, then they know that they are actually in the right alley. So that became a little bit different trend, so to speak, for the songwriters.
What role do you believe cultural influences play in the creation and reception of K-pop and J-pop music on a global scale, and how do you integrate those influences in your work?
So I think it was around 3 or 4 years ago, one of the idol group called Zico, he actually came up with a challenge that is actually doing the same choreography that he has for his single. And then, obviously he used to be the idol, but he produced and, sing and write the lyrics and everything. And so he has a lot of connections. So he had a TV show appearance. And then he met all these different friends from different groups. So he tried to teach how to choreograph on his single. So everyone actually dance with the guy on the platform. So he actually posted that, and then suddenly become a challenge. So that's how it actually started, dance challenge. So every record label try to do that, because they realize that all the different fans from the different group, when they watch those dance challenges, and then you can actually have an influx of the fan listening and checking out those singles, meaning you can have a free viral marketing with the dance challenge. Now become a marketing tool, but it used to be just the random occasion that he wants to actually have his friends dance with dance for his songs with the friends. So I think that kind of become a starting point of how TikTok could be viral when it comes to promotional tool for the new singles. And obviously K-pop has a different segments, like 15 seconds for the verse, 15 seconds for the pre. Then you can cut that out and then make the viral marketing tool, as in a dance challenge or some type of a short clip that people actually can see or dance. And then you can have different members representing each segment. Then you have four distinctive parts that you can promote with a short or reels. So verse, pre-chorus, and then or the drop or the dance break, something like that. So I think it is just natural. It became natural to go that way.
What do you consider to be the key ingredients of a truly iconic hit song, especially in the context of K-pop and J-pop?
For me, I think it has to be organic. So you can't force anything. So when it comes to, actually one of the songs that I did co-written and co-produced is that it's called the Baggy Jeans. So Baggy Jeans, who like, how did you come up with the Baggy Jeans as a song title, and then you just sing baggy jeans in the chorus? Sometimes you just have a good laugh and the conversation. So I always ask to my co-writers just to start with a session. I don't bring anything. I don't bring any tracks. So I start from the scratch always. So just came there. So what do you listen? Like, what's your just tell me what's your feeling today? How have you been? Those type of things. What do you listen these days? So that actually start from the start of the session, and then yeah, that's actually cool. So sometimes people are saying that, I'm having a hard time, but still I feel grateful. Okay, then let's call it a grateful. Let's write about the feeling of being grateful. So then it becomes organically grow. But when it comes to K-pop, it is actually very important to visualize the concept, because it's about the packaging, it's about the choreography, it's about how to cater, how to trigger the fans' interest. So I mentioned the baggy jeans. Then you can see that the groups wearing baggy jeans. And then you can actually see that with the baggy jeans, and then you can see the choreography emphasizing the baggy jeans, and also the packaging with the baggy jeans. Part of the jeans actually become the part of the package of the CDs. Then it gives you the chance for the A&Rs from the record label to how to do the post-production, how to package the marketing tool, how to trigger the fans' interest with the concept. So if you actually have a strong concept like that, then it is actually you have a higher chance to be placed.
That's what I was just going to say. So it really starts with a concept for you guys, and then you build it around. You already build it out before you even approach. Yeah. Interesting.
So there's another example that I did. It's called Spicy, and then they're from. It's done by Esra, and then in that album, I also produced a song called Salty and Sweet. So it kind of have a consistency as in an album, but it's actually a completely different song. But spicy, salty, and sweet. So you got all the taste in music, but with the taste as well. So that gives you a little bit of chance for the fans that, this is fun, So yeah, you can actually trigger those type of elements for A&Rs actually to be engaged with the concepts.
It's interesting you bring that up, because one of the things that I'm curious about, and which I think our audience would be curious about, is describing that sort of process from receiving the brief from the label. You spoke about the A&R aspect to finalizing the production. How does this process differ working on songs in J-pop versus perhaps the American market?
So the A&R point of view, from the record label, obviously there are so many K-pop groups competing with each other, so you can't really have a same sound. Then that would actually trigger the backfire, of the fans. Why our team is mimicking or replicating what they have done. We have to have our A&Rs working. They have to think. That kind of backfire you can have. So you have to have a distinctive approach. So when label actually send out the briefs or leads, they always say this is super, super confidential. Meaning they always send out to the partners that can actually trust. So solicited publishers or songwriters or production team, they only choose the best of the best, so that they send out the briefs. But still, it doesn't necessarily mean that those realm or genre of the song will be placed as a single. Because imagine, I told you about the numbers of the demos that they receive from SM Entertainment. They receive around 20 to 30,000 demos every year for 200 songs, 200 release. So meaning you have a 1% or 2% cut rate, but these 20 to 30,000 songs are done by the platinum songwriters or the Grammy winners and all the award-winning producers. So competition is super, super high. So if you actually come up with the same song or similar song to the reference track, then the A&Rs probably get the 50 similar songs from the different world, and then they have to pick up the one song that they think, oh, maybe this work, you know? So you have to also think about the business or the perception or the psychology that the A&R would have. So if you are the songwriter and producer, maybe, okay, I understand why they're going that way, but what if actually combine those things and different things on top so that I make the different song so that it actually shine through among the peers. So I think to be successful in K-pop as a producer and songwriter, you can also follow the consistent influx, the insight from the labels, but still you can be a little bit differentiated so that you can have the strength on your own as a creator.
And you seems like you also have to be very, you have to pay attention to what's going on. And you have to be listening. It can't all, it doesn't operate in a vacuum.
So that's why I said you can be creative as much as possible. And you are allowed to be, because it is music after all. Good music is good music.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Let me ask you, how do you approach writing English language songs for K-pop and J-pop artists while ensuring that the lyrics maintain their authenticity and resonate with both the artist and their fan bases?
Yeah, so when it comes to the demos and most of the singles and the distinctive songs are actually written in English, meaning it is actually coming from the sessions and the collaboration between the local writers and the international writers. And the international writers now, some of the writers are very, very into K-pop and J-pop market, so they actually study and research what would be the next single or concept for this group. And they know the numbers of the members and the name of the members. Sometimes they are actually better than me. So K-pop, since the K-pop has been expanding so quickly and rapidly, so they actually tend to study a little bit more so that they can come up with the counter suggestions like that. So I think it is actually fun to watch that people from the different territories knows about K-pop or the Korean culture more than you actually are as a Korean. So that is actually different. Sorry, what was the question?
Well, it was just how do you approach? How do you approach writing English language songs for K-pop and J-pop artists?
So most of the demos are written in English because of the collaboration between local writers and international writers. And if you come up with the concept, and then obviously there are keywords in the lyrics. So when it is adapted in Japanese or Korean, especially in Korean, so they A&R suggest, we want to keep this theme or keyword here and there. So mostly chorus are sung in English, or they kept the majority of the English keyword so that the people actually can understand, accept as it is. So, but when it comes to lyrics, it's not really just a translation of the lyrics, but it is actually adopting the theme. So, for example, the syllables and then the grammar of between English and Korean are totally different. So we say "I love you," but we in Korean we say "I you love." So we put the verb in the end.
Interesting.
So yeah, and then when you have the distinctive numbers of syllables in the one sentence, and then the length of the sentence is completely different in Korean as well, but when you listen to the demos and you are used to the rhymes of the lyrics in English, so you know why it actually sounds good, because you can have a rhyme or a rhyme, those type of things. Then Korean lyrics, actually lyricist has to follow those rhymes in order to keep that original feel to the syllables and the pronunciation.
Interesting.
Meaning they have to come up with strangely and miraculously, they have to come up with the better word or similar word in Korean to come up with to match those this rhyme. So when I read the Korean lyrics, like compared to the original English lyrics, it is actually like a pronunciation-wise, it sounds almost similar, but the Korean lyrics actually carries the original theme or the context of the lyrics, so that I don't lose any flow of the dynamics. So which is actually a very, very strange, and it feels like a miracle But they are so used to it now. Korean lyrics is like an inventor of the concept. But they are doing those, making sure that they are following those rhymes as well as keeping the main theme.
So verses would be in Korean and then the choruses would be in English?
Here and there, still
Right.
you can have Korean lyrics in the chorus, but still we are keeping the keywords here and there. And then there's another funny episode. So I talked about the salty and sweet, and then there is a little bit of a kindergarten rhyme. And then my co-writer actually sang a kitty kitty run run, So it is actually just, it doesn't mean anything. But then they kept it, and then they incorporated it with the choreography. So kitty kitty run, like
Right.
doing the cat, type of mimicking choreography. And then that become a viral because Korean fans thought that it was very cute, and then it was done really like sophisticatedly. So, which I didn't really expect it to be happening.
So it was an unknown circumstance that came out of it.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So that can be also another side effect of keeping the English lyrics, but still put it into the context.
And have a viral moment come out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, yesterday, Jinbyi, we were talking about the whole element of fan culture.
Yeah.
And you brought up a lot of very interesting things. Can you offer any insights into the fan culture within K-pop and J-pop industries and its role in building artists' careers?
Yeah. So fandoms in Korea and obviously in Japan are very loyal. So they actually want their artists to be successful and also to be rich as well, financially. Meaning, when there are merchandises, when there are releases, they want to actually buy something for their artists to be successful. So that's actually the different cultural differences when it comes to the fandom between Western and Eastern. So I guess, probably the cultural thing, but they are super loyal. So when they become a fandom of when they become a fan of a certain artist, that it can actually be sustained for more than decade, 2 decades, still going on. When even they retire and then become, married to someone, and then still they are actually rooting for them to come back
Wow.
or release something.
So it's very fanatical.
Yeah, and also it is actually really personal as well.
Yeah.
So some of the artists actually having, when they are retired, but they have the fan gathering. Even if these are like 10 people or 20 people coming to the restaurant, but still congratulate their birthday and then having a dinner together and then asking, now you get married, and so I have to sing for your wedding. Those type of things are happening in Korea.
Wow.
So it's actually really personal and close. So I think that is fundamental foundation between the artists and the fans. So and also the packaging itself. So I'll talk about the marketing perspective. So Korean label are having putting a lot of efforts to come up with the best ever package. So let's say there was a birthday song, Birthday. It was called Birthday from Red Velvet. So Birthday, obviously you can actually imagine of cake. And then the artist's name was actually Red Velvet. So they actually made a package of a Red Velvet cake of a CD. So when you actually open up this package, then there's a CD and all these photos and everything that the people actually can enjoy. But it was actually packed as the cake because it is a birthday. Yeah. So
Wow.
if you have a consistency of that, then fans actually get so into it, get engaged, then they believe that, wow, our art is the best. Obviously, they are the best. That's why I love about it. So those type of engagement and also involvement somehow with the music and the package and all the environment between artists and the fans, pushes the environments where fans are living and breathing with an artist. So it's not only just going to concert or listening to the song or watching them YouTube. It is actually in the daily life that can actually see that, wow, I'm with them.
Yeah,
Right.
I hear that a lot in those territories. We had this gentleman from Warner, Carl Kongham,
Carl Kongham, who's the managing
who
director
talked
of
about their
Thailand.
artists
Yeah.
that the amount of fanatical support that they're running Facebook ads. Some of their fans are running ads for their artists in their territories to help support it. I had never heard of that.
So
the marketing, yeah.
For example, when there's a birthday of certain members, then they actually buy the advertisement of the billboard.
Wow.
On the subway.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, so if you go to Gangnam Station, for example, and then you can see that, oh, wow, this guy is a birthday now. And then it is actually supported by the fan. So when BTS wasn't BTS now, a few years back, and then obviously there were the billboard on the Vegas and the LA. There were so many BTS commercials on top. And then the executives of BTS in US, they didn't approve it, and they were wondering, like, wow, how did it happen? And it actually was sponsored by the fans.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, in the US.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that is so interesting about BTS's success is that when they finally made it to Saturday Night Live and performed for the first time a song in Korean, not in English, they were already selling out arenas in America.
Exactly.
And they didn't have already a top 5, smash it. But right to your point, that element of marketing, that element of reaching the fan base was very, very real on a big level.
Definitely.
Which was really, really, it goes to your point. And Blackpink, you look at the history, it's not just in the last 2 years that band's come about. I mean, it's been going on for, a good 10 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Really quickly, Jin, you talked about earlier music that influenced you. Have there been any books or films that have really inspired you that you can share with the audience?
Well, books. Sorry, this is really personal.
It's okay.
It's not for the interview, but I've been reading a lot of psychology books, but it's not really something to do with the music.
Well, it doesn't have to necessarily do with music. If it's influential, that you think would be good, definitely share it.
I've been watching a lot of Netflix series when it comes to documentary, and then all this forefront people who used to be in the forefronting in the music industry back in 90s and 80s. Whenever I see them, and then just watching the master craftsmanship that they actually created, and then you always wonder, can I do that? Can I replicate, or can I achieve like that? But I think it goes back to the vision that I have, and it goes to everyone, I guess. Am I good enough? Can I really do this without any networks or anything? So I mentioned that my bachelor degree was life engineering, so I actually studied audio production. I finished my master's in London, and then I had absolutely no one. And then I never knew that I actually could do this, and then try to do this. And I came back, and you know what happened? So my first job was actually to be a professor. So I was a professor in music tech when I was 29. And then I was the youngest professor. And then still, I was too young. I didn't have anything to share. And so for 3 years, I've done it. And then I became a chair of the department. And that's when I actually quit the job to be a full-time music producer. And then that's when I met all this, my team, Design Music from Norway, and then the rest became the history. And obviously there are so many disciplines in the moments when I actually, I'm not good enough, I have to quit, But still, it is in you that you have to believe in yourself, and, and also you have to accept that when you actually visualize yourself in your head that you actually made those, you can make those achievements in the future, then you can push it. So back to the stories that I saw, the Netflix series, they also struggled. They went hardship, and they, about to file bankruptcy and everything, but still they managed to go there. And it is a part of the process. And always, in the session, somebody says, "Oh, Jin, is it really working?" Within 3 hours, we didn't have anything, But I always say, believe me, I've been here. Trust the process. When you're in the process, when you trust the process, then it will happen. So Everything is about timing. Everything is about the people that you're surrounded with. But still, if you believe in yourself, and it takes a time, but it will happen. And that is actually what I learned from all these people that I admire in the music industry. Not even in the music industry, but everyone who actually made a successful career from nothing. Then it is my inspiration.
Okay. Are there any other pieces of advice that you would have for our listeners who want to pursue a career like yours as a professional songwriter and producer for a career?
Yeah. So I talked about my career as a professor, and then I was doing a lot of sync music. I did the TV commercials, film compositions, but then I realized that music became an occupation that makes me money, makes me carry on my life as just a professional. But like when I decided to be a musician, but it wasn't the goal. Music was the passion. Music was the reason why I actually want to live my life. Then I was wondering, how was I able to forget about all this? Because I wanted to be a musician, and that was the only reason. And because of life, because of the difficulties that I have, that I'm facing, I just completely forgot out the fundamental reason why I wanted to become a musician. And when I was invited to the Norwegian camp that is now co-hosted by me as well, called the Song Expo. And then when I was there for the first time, I realized that there are Grammy winners, there are platinum record producers, and they're still having a huge fun in that session. They cry, they scream, they dance whenever they come up with the new ideas and fresh ideas. And then I was like, wow, how did I forget about this? How did I forget about this joy of creation? That is the reason why you started that career and you started that path. And then on the way back home on the flight, I couldn't sleep. My heart was pounding, and wow, I have to do this. I have to do this. So that year, including the tracks and all the finished songs, I actually made 200 songs on that year. Wow. So it's like 2 days a song, or like every day a song. So normally, when I was super focused on the production back in the days, I wrote more than 100 songs per year, and then the 20 singles, and then that actually eventually become number ones in Billboard and such. So disciplines and perseverance, and obviously trust, and then accept who you are is a key to be a successful songwriter, and it is still a part of the process. So you have to trust the process, and believe me, I've been there. I've been down. I was doubting myself, but still, when you believe in yourself, and when you say to yourself, I am the best version of myself, then it will happen.
Jinbyi, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow, what an interesting conversation, Eric. The points that he made about the cultural influences and what they are and how they influence his creative process, whether he's working with a K-pop artist or a J-pop artist, and having that consciousness and that awareness. And it is interesting. It's something that we've talked about with other people on the show. Right. With being aware, especially like with sync, putting, Rampersad talked about that, with putting certain kinds of music in certain productions, knowing that they're going to be in certain areas. Right. He talked about that, those influences within, his own work when he's working with an artist.
Yeah, I thought that that's a very interesting thing. Also, the role of the fans within the culture of K-pop and the influence that they have. I mean, we kind of talked about this at the top of the show, but it's just, very interesting how deep the fandom goes. I think one of the other people that we talked to recently from Warner Music Thailand, Carl, where he talked about, I think, in the sense of how fans were placing ads of Facebook ads.
They were marketing.
They were marketing for the artists at their own expense. Yeah. And I thought that was mind-blowing. But again, in this example with JINBYJIN, in the world of K-pop, how deeply embedded that culture is within the fandom of those artists.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you hear about things where people are above and beyond the normal fan of just buying their music or buying a ticket to their show, but really ingrained within the culture. Right. Which is not something that you see in a lot of other formats of music.
And how connective the artist is with the fans. You know, again, we talk about this all the time. If you're not engaging with your audience,
Yeah.
you're in a world of trouble. So, you know, I thought that was very, very interesting to see how deep that fandom does go. Also, I thought his advice was very genuine and inspirational. Again, I thought he's just a real bright guy, and it was really, to me, it was a breath of fresh air, and I was very surprised by this interview and his story.
Yeah, you know, I didn't know him before. I know you didn't know him before. It was great getting to meet him. It was great getting somebody who's on the inside. And I thought his process of writing English language lyrics with the artist was a really interesting one. You know, K-pop is, you know, doesn't only write in Korean or J-pop in Japanese, but now in English, and how that process works for him, how he works with the artist on doing
And the
that.
sensibilities.
Absolutely, and what he brings to that. Really, really interesting.
Hey, Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at mubutv.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top-rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes and our space. You can also find us at social media at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Music Business Insider video series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.